So nice, so nice to have you as a guest. Usually you're the one coordinating all the work.
Yeah, you've been doing such a great job, Kevin, of pulling out the magic and all these amazing people that have come together around this project and really showing what we're trying to educate around this. So thank you for all your time and energy for all of us for this. I really appreciate it. And I know the community is going to really appreciate it when they see it all.
Oh no, it's my pleasure. It's a beautiful community, and even though it's in crisis, the people are still pretty epic. And so the main idea is to showcase the individuals that combine, create the cannabis community. And in your case, you have a really long, deep history in cannabis and in the region. And I know that you're very well known locally, but maybe we can kind of start with your background and kind of get us to, who you are and what motivates you. Because to me, you really embody that original spirit that built Humboldt County. And I was fortunate to meet a lot of the people that created the world we're in today when I first got here. And it seems to have profoundly impacted you in the way you behave and act. So I'd love to, bring some of that out to the public.
Well, I started by going to what you might call a revolutionary preschool in San Diego. It was called the OB Free School. It was before we had unschooling. And it was really a school put together to teach kids to really fight for freedom and how to be not agitators, but how to disrupt society and create change. I was just a little kid when I was doing all of that, but I think it really shows to who my mom was. And she really believed that there was a way to build a better future. She came from England, met my dad when she was 19, had me really early in Ocean Beach. In Ocean Beach, I don't know if you know anything about the history of Ocean Beach in San Diego. Well, in 1974, Ocean Beach had the military come in because we were such a politically active community. I have 5 FBI files on my childhood. We had 8 informants on us daily, reading our mail. I was a part of a group that was stationed on Cape May Street called the Red House. Very, very politically active community. We managed to keep the Republicans out of Florida back in the early 70s. Our leader of this community is still in hiding because of how active he was. That being said, it was also a very volatile environment for young women, and my mom had me and my sisters. She pulled us out of that environment in 1976 and found utopia in Trinity County. She got a nursing gig in Weaverville and fell in love with the river, with the country, with her partner. And then 6 months later, we were in an accident on Trinity River, and my sister died in that accident. And I bring it up because that accident is really what beholdened me into this community, because I had lived in this really politically active community, and as a little girl, you were a target. And moving up here into a community called Burnt Ranch, being vulnerable, I thought was bad. And when my sister died, we were obviously incredibly vulnerable. And what happened is, instead of us being targeted, we were raised up and cared for. We had all walks of life feeding us every day, helping us every day. And they really, in one of our worst times, came around us, even though we really were new to the community. And that shifted me forever. It really taught me what community love was. And it started healing me from some severe traumas as a little girl. I was involved in some pretty heinous things, or I was put in heinous situations. And coming up to this community really allowed me to see what good people were, and learn that there really were good people in this world. And that I'm sorry, Kevin, I have COVID right now. So
No, it's okay. It's okay. No, it's all right. Take your time.
but it really showed me what love was. Not love for, intimate love, but real love for your community, for the trees, for the people, for the water, all these elements that gave me peace instead of terror, because I had really lived under terror since I was a young girl. And up here gave me peace. Everyone was kind, everybody was welcoming, no one tried to take advantage of you. If you ran out of firewood, your neighbor gave you firewood. If they needed vegetables, you gave them vegetables. It was very different from the community that I was born into in San Diego. And so that really is how I fell in love with community. Community saved me. My Burnt Ranch community became my family, and they saved me. And that's how I fell in love with this place. Being counterculture, my mom was a midwife. We got involved in the cannabis community right away. That's where our like-minded folks were. And so by the age of 9, I started trimming for the local pot grower. Loved it. It gave me great summer money to spend the next year. And it just kind of became a routine. That was our routine. Harvest, you make some money, you get some extra solar panels, hunker down for the winter. I would go to San Diego for the summer and then come back up and trim and step into school season. And that was just pretty much the routine, really, until the mid to late 80s. My first real memory of camp is I was 13 and I was standing at school, waiting for my stepdad to pick me up, and 13 cop cars and a couple vans pulled up. All these sheriffs pull out with huge machine guns, which I'd never seen before. They jump in 2 vans and they head up my road. I got on the phone, called my mom. We all knew what to do. And it just became a little different then. That's pretty much when the helicopters started hitting us a couple years before. And it got a little scary. So I stepped out. I also didn't like weed. Because of all these things, there's a lot more that happens around when you're in the middle of a drug war that we don't really need to go into here. But I think a lot of us know what those things are, and it created a lot of trauma. And as a young woman, I've experienced rape, I've been kidnapped, I've had a gun to my head, I've been robbed, I've had all these things happen to me, some of them a couple times. And I never got justice. I never had a voice because of the drug war, because if I was to have a voice, our neighbors could get in trouble, because I was taught to hide everything. So I never got to report. I never got to do any of those things. And I felt very angry about that. And I really blamed it on weed. When legalization came about, or more when I got injured in 1999, I had a new perspective. I started seeing it as a medicine. And when I started using it as a medicine for my own wellness, I started realizing that all the anger I had around the plant, around the culture, was about the drug war. It was about the oppression caused by the illegalization of this plant, which turned me into a really strong advocate for the plant, because I had a spinal cord injury, I was in a wheelchair, and a dispensary came to me that I was providing for and asked me to start speaking up for them on their behalf. And I really started learning through that process that Hummingbird Healing Center invited me in on, that this war, this plant was in my community, and all the horrors that I felt around my community were purely because of oppression. And being raised as a revolutionary or as a disruptor, I just didn't like that. And so I started becoming engaged in looking for ways to help support our beautiful culture, because sustainability, regenerative, supporting each other, living through shared resources are always the world needs to start functioning on, because not doing this is what's hurting the world. So how do we get through this around this beautiful medicine and get this medicine to everybody without killing the culture? And so that really is when my journey began, on just trying to find solutions to maintain our integrity and our beauty in this culture, yet to not be oppressed anymore, which is what made me a proponent for legalization. I wanted to see an end to the crime. I wanted to see an end to women being stuck in situations and not being able to ask for help. I wanted to see an end to children losing their parents. You know, I wanted my son to be able to go to school and not have to hide half of who he was. And that's what made me a proponent for legalization.
Did you begin Humboldt Grace then, or was that something that came later? Because you not only were involved in being an advocate for human rights through cannabis, but also through just human rights in general, and you've had a very large impact in the area, you know, from that position. How did that come about?
So Humboldt Grace is very interesting. Humboldt Grace was actually a man I loved very much. He was South African, and he saw Humboldt County much like the apartheid war. And that we were this beautiful oppressed place that needed freedom. And he came up with the name Humboldt Grace because he thought he believed in brands and all these things. And he believed in 2009 that legalization was going to come to a place where you could make an impact. He created the name. I never imagined anything would come of it. But then as we started moving through legalization, and we saw our culture not be represented completely in culture. You know, we moved forward based on economics, and we forgot about the oppression and the harm as we moved through legalization. And it gave me a way to start speaking on the culture and the rights, the human rights, without it being Lele. Because at that point, everything was Lele this, Lele that, Lele this. And I didn't feel comfortable building on my name, because it wasn't about me, it was about the community. And so Humboldt Grace became what I used online, and I started building community around it, so it was more inclusive. And then in, I think it was 2020, the Ink people invited us to become a part of their Dreammaker projects, which covered us under the nonprofit and allowed us to start really doing good works. But I also had the privilege of chairing the county's Human Rights Commission, which has allowed me to do a lot of good work, but is separate from Humboldt Grace. But I think that if we can approach policy through the human rights perspective, we'll get a lot more sensible policy. And as we can see in our communities, policy has really had a negative impact on the human rights of our community. Our crime has increased, our suicide rate has like quadrupled, our homelessness rate has increased. We have more children couch surfing in the United States per capita than any other community. You know, I could go on and on. Racism has increased. We were tagged like 4 years ago by the NAACP for the most racist community online because of incidents that have happened. You know, it really, the things that I got up and fought for legalization have not gotten better. And we need to bring more awareness to that. So I really hope to see the policy conversation kind of move more in that direction. So I think we'll get more sensible policy when we look at the human rights perspective.
No, I agree. That's how we originally met, was through I was working on the MRCUSA, the medical marijuana rights, and I had seen the catastrophe that occurred in Washington State, where they took the medical program and then just removed it and said legalization is what's going to replace it. And I realized that the reality is that the medical marijuana program, it allows people to be able to have far higher levels of support and access. And to me, legalization was the same thing. And people couldn't understand my position because I had such a historically long career as dope grower. And which is funny because it's almost like that's like our flag when we fly our dope grower flag. But it was a name given to us, but it I don't have a bad connotation to it. But what I learned from being in medical cannabis as a dispensary operator and owner was that most that are there got there too late because of stigma, and that people like me that inherently break laws for most of my life. I mean, I'm older now, so I'm slower with my law breaking maneuvers, but for the majority of my life, I broke them freely and willingly and swiftly. That wasn't the norm. And when I got into medical cannabis, what I saw was tremendous numbers of people that were good people that were trying to behave under the constraints of societal law, and it was killing them. And I believe that even though I knew legalization was going to cause me tremendous problems as a cannabis operator and it was going to be a nightmare, I realized that my interests really weren't that important compared to the bigger picture, and that it was a tough decision to make because you have to make one that says, you're not as important. And I watched you work extremely hard in that same vein, and that's how we got to originally meet. It was through these type of endeavors. And as we go forward, you came up with this idea to do an auction, which I thought was just brilliant. And I would like to have you go into, what was the impetus? What created that spark, and how'd you begin it?
Well, it first came from wanting to be able to communicate two things, which was one, that we didn't need to grow a bunch of weed to get our value as a community, like to show that how our art really, who we were as creators. And as a patient, for me, genetics are really, really important. There's certain terpene profiles that can make me ill, and I smoke a lot of cannabis because I really need it. And I need certain forms of it. Certain forms just don't do what I need. So I knew as a consumer, and because of my past lifetime in working in a lot of retail, that the consumer wanted that experience too. Like once you get an experience that you really like, that's why you go back and buy that Wrigley's gum, or that's why you go back and buy those Coca-Colas, is because you liked what Coca-Cola gave you, and you want to get it again. And so I wanted to help communicate to our community to teach them how to look at the plant in a way that gave them more value. I have friends that have been researching, who've graduated from Oxford University, who moved into this area in the 70s, who've been researching their plants for like things like MRSA, for cancers, and they've been documenting these things, and they have certain strains that they know do certain things better. Yet we were totally missing the boat in that conversation. As we were selling our weed, everybody was saying go big or go home, and I was going, oh my god, no, stay small. And so it was, how can we find a way? And plus, I'm one woman, right? Like one woman with no income. So how do we find a way to not only show this beauty that you see, like how can I teach everyone to see their beauty, but also to yell loud enough for the outside world to hear, or to sing loud enough for the outside world to hear. And auctions traditionally were created to help show the value of something. I got to meet the president emeritus of Christie's Auction House through this project. He's in his 80s. And he told me, he goes, that Christie's Auction House was designed to teach people what a Renoir was. People didn't understand. They would, oh, look at that painting. But to really understand the value of the pigments and what it took to create those pigments and the uniqueness of the brush strokes, the general public needed to be taught, and auctions were developed to teach those things. And they're also really fun and exciting, and our community has been beaten down so much over the years. I personally don't like competition. I'm very competitive within myself. And so I prefer connection. And I saw an auction as a way to create that connection amongst ourselves, not competing against each other, but also to get all that value that we get from competitions. I also saw it as a way to help sell our product better, as you have, and a lot of us in the group have been involved in these licensing agreements around the cultivars. When you're able to show that you have something special or something desired, and you can authenticate that and create fact behind it, we've all seen how the value increases around that. And it just seems a lot smarter with historically how our community has succeeded to create a system where we're innovating and we're back to the mad scientists in our gardens, creating new and fabulous things that everybody from all over the world wants, than bleeding our hands and our backs trying to give mass amounts like Target. We've never been the We Grows. Do you remember the We Grow guys? I love the We Grow guys. Do you remember those guys?
Yeah.
Totally. I still follow Dar on social media. But we've never been the We Grows, right? We've always been the people who give the We Grows the ideas. And if you look at solar panels, if you look at paint wheels, if you look at Thule racks, if you look at all the other innovations that have come out of this region, we are the innovators. And it's because we have nature, it's because we have weed, it's because we have this beautiful lifestyle that our brains open up and create. And an auction is a really cool way to educate on all of those things through story, through entertainment, through joy, not through competition, not through hardness, but in a fun way. It's also a way to take a small group and do a big thing that doesn't take, we could utilize digital media through an auction as well, and not have to have thousands and thousands of people come in the first time. So it was just a pathway to take a whole bunch of ideas and values and package them in to kind of a roadmap, I guess, to do business a little differently, and to have fun, and to bring us back together in a way that was celebratory around the plant and fun.
Hang on.
No problem.
No, it's incredible because when you began it, you did something unique, which is you brought in a tremendous number of people to participate, which is just so rare in any community project these days, where typically projects are initiated and then only 2 or 3 stakeholders are put into play. So you get this really limited view of what's possible, and you opened up the door to many. So you had a tremendous number of people coming in to provide input. And how many years now has this been going on?
I think it'll be like 3 in September. It's almost 3 years. Well, and that really, Kevin, is really where my only talent is in this whole conversation around the auction and the genetics. And I really attribute it back to what I mentioned in the beginning, is OB Free School. Is my mom was an incredible woman, and she was a disruptor, and she really believed you can change the world, and she did change the world through her path in life. And being in this industry for as long, people will listen to me. People will open doors for me. You know, I can just put my creds on the table and they'll open doors. And I've had the benefit of getting to leverage that around this conversation. My biggest hurdle has always been my disability. You know, I can't travel all over the world I have to travel pretty comfortably, and it takes a large budget and all those sort of things. So I haven't been able to get out and bring the relationships together that I would have liked to. But I've gotten to meet so many incredible people who really, really see the value and the importance of our community sustaining through this industry. Not only that, they see that a lot of the research needs to be done here because of all the IP in these regions, because of our biodiversity, how much could happen, right? And so I got to have these conversations over the years, but never really bring anything together. And then COVID hit. And when COVID hit, it really opened up the digital pathways. It normalized them. It made people feel safe communicating through Zoom. It made digital communications and digital media more accepted. And so it allowed everyone in a very easy way come together on something not that I was doing, but we were all doing. We were all working this same concept in different ways, some of us in the same ways, but we were all willing to come to the table and share. We were all willing to come to the table and listen to each other. We were all willing to come to the table and respect each other. And I really think that has to do with saying, look, our foundational core rules are love and grace. We might not like each other all in this group, but we all have something to share. And so we're going to sit at the table and we're going to talk about what we have in common. And what we know is that these genetics are not being valued. What we know is that these communities aren't being valued. And so people who knew that I've been having that conversation through legalization were, like yourself, had been willing to take the time out every week to come together. What makes the group work is all of you guys. You guys show up and you guys share your ideas. You guys interject when we have guests. You guys ask questions. And that makes all of us learn from each other, because it's a brilliant group of minds. I mean, everyone in there is incredibly intelligent, heart-based, and driven. And so even when just 4 of you get together in that room, things happen. We learn from each other because we are diverse. We have people from all over the globe coming in. And I think I just happened to ask at the right time. And I also happen to have the integrity and the reputation that you know of and other people know of to trust the space. And it's that trusted space that created all the innovation. You know, you guys developed the auction. I just had the, like, let's do this. You guys developed, how are we going to authenticate this? You know, I never knew, I never even thought about having to get a plant out to farms to get more value from it. And it was someone in the group, you know, Sam, the grow off. That's why we're getting to do this, you know, with the grow off. It's getting to go out with that many people. I didn't have a relationship with medicinal genomics. You did, Christian did, you know, and everyone just brought their magic to the table. So I think it's really the integrity and that keeps this group going. And when that much intelligence and knowledge gets together, solutions are found. And I really see this auction as one project of this group. You know, this auction needs to keep going and it needs to function on its own. But this group of brains still needs to come together and be creating solutions. So I see us more like we're an incubator, you know, like bring us a problem and let us solve it.
I love it. What's some of the difficulties that you didn't expect it, because it's been such a project it's so many moving parts. what are some of the things that you had to work through that you, the struggle?
Oh, well, the skunk one is a little bit of a struggle, because after discovering, these heritage, these unique properties, I guess is what we'll say to keep it simple. It's okay. Well, now how do we get it out there? How do we need to test it. The supply chain is a struggle, but these aren't struggles that I didn't, I knew the supply chain was going to be a struggle. I don't know. It's actually, Kevin, I don't want to like jinx us, but it's been one of the easiest projects I've ever put together. And that is because of all of you. I've done all these things in different ways with other groups, and I've had a lot of fun. But I've never gotten to work with such an incredible group of dedicated people. And I think that's the biggest surprise, is that it's been actually really, it's been a lot of work. I mean, it's a lot of work, but it's also not been really hard because there's just so much support around it, and we're all working together. You're doing this for the group, Hendrix is doing what they're doing with the skunk. Everyone is putting their magic to the table. So that, how easy it's been, and I just don't want to jinx us, but it's really, it's been, that has been the biggest surprise.
Well, that's excellent. No, I feel the same way. I mean, I know there's always, unexpected hardships to work through on any project, but all in all, it's been pretty unique to get so many people together working to, collaboratively for a common goal that benefits many that you don't know. Like, to me, that's like the essence. When I learned about charity, the greatest form of charity was the people who receive it don't know who provided it, and the people who provide it don't know who benefited from it, so that you don't feel above someone and the person who received doesn't feel below. And I just love that, just because it was just so pure. And at moments in the meetings, it feels like that, because what you have is, you have so many of us from different perspectives, but all with the same common goal. And I think you just did a tremendous job bringing the people together, and then kind of creating a framework for which we operate under, which really is under your auspices of love and grace. And it's pretty genuine. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to support you the way I do on this if I didn't have that belief. And so I just want to say thank you for being who you are, because it allowed so many of us to work together and try to achieve something that was really positive for many that we don't know.
Kevin, I really was raised that you benefit when everyone benefits. You don't benefit alone. It's awfully lonely, and it actually can become a bit torturous. And I think that's part of it, is that I'm bringing everyone together, not because for myself, that's not what gets me off. What gets me off is seeing all of you, everyone in the group, benefit from this. And I think that is something that we need to be very sure to instill in our next generation. It's got lost that we really do have to work together in humanity to succeed, that we cannot step on each other to succeed. And whether it's because of how I was raised, in the community I was raised, or the hardships I've had to overcome, my body hurts when I step on somebody else. I just physically can't do that. And I think that's how we find real joy. And in some religions, they call it service. But I think that's how we find true joy in life, is to authentically give to each other. But what we've started to do is give with expectations, and that it just doesn't work. But look what happens when we really, look at your giving of your time here. The people that you're elevating through your work in your community by giving your time here is incredible. but what do you get out of it? Joy, right? Like, this is bringing you pleasure, right? That should be enough. Because then, you know what, when you're enjoying pleasure, you're going to go out and kick more ass for the ganjier. You're going to do better in the garden, you know? And I think we've just kind of forgotten that. I have this spinal cord injury that kind of forces me to sit and think a lot and feel a lot because I don't feel good, and be very sensitive to all of that. And I just truly enjoy watching this come together, seeing all of you light up as we get further and benefit from it. And I think that's what the plant is about. You know, that is what the plant taught us too, as a community. And if we build more projects around these principles, and listen, it's not me. I come from a military family. Look at the military. One of the reasons the military has sustained itself so long is because of how it builds its leadership. First of all, you don't stay in one place very long because they want new ideas and new diversity. You know, so you need new people. You can't have one person doing everything all the time, or things become stagnant. And that's what we have going on. We've got all sorts of people coming to the table, putting their best at the table, putting their leadership at the table, going out and leading their communities. I'm just the person who sits and listens to you all and is putting it together in a package so we can teach it easier to everybody else. It's all of you. I'm just a good listener, I guess.
Awesome. When will the auction unveil itself publicly? When do you want to bring this out into the world?
I think we're going to start pushing the auction hard in January. You know, maybe December, but the industry's really burdened in the fall. Not such a great time. We're looking for a couple good partners. So this does sustain, because as you say, Kevin, you need to do business to keep it going. And this auction is definitely something that we want to see keep going. But I think in January, we'll start really pushing out the cultivars. I hope by September, we have at least 5 to 20 different plants, different genetics that are going to go up for auction. You know, the skunk is really just our test subject. This isn't the skunk auction. This is about showing off new and unique things and creating innovation. The skunk has gifted us with some amazing DNA evidence to help us teach how to look at the plant, teach how to build value. But I know Daniel from Hendrix has something he's been working on for a while. We sure hope you will participate. We've got a couple other hot shots alluding that they have something they want to put in. So we can start, you know, talking about all the magic you guys are engaging in the auction. But by January, I think most of the larger cannabis community will know what we're talking about. We're going to start social media and educating. You know, we're rolling this show out this month.
Where?
Yeah. But we're going to start educating on our social media in August really hard on the concepts around the auction. So people understand this fall as they're harvesting. Maybe they'll take a look at their plants a little differently. Maybe they'll rethink their next harvest a little differently. We want to start getting the education out there as quick as possible.
Excellent. Yeah, no, it's been an incredible project to work with you on, and I've just had a great experience, and I've learned a lot because it's just fascinating to be in a room full of people that are so diverse and so accomplished in their own respective areas. And in closing, anything that you'd like to bring up since you have this moment?
I want to thank you, Kev, for the support and the brotherhood in this journey. It's meant a lot to me. And I want to thank all the volunteers of the Legacy Project It really is all of us that's making this possible, and it's going to take all of us to get to the auction. And I want to let anyone know who's watching who feels worried about this, that I'm really try to remain open and accessible, that I'm always welcome to get on a Zoom and have a chat, as is the rest of the team. But we really are, I build organically, and this is a growing, moving project, and we don't know exactly what it's going to turn into or look like at the end, just like our plants. And so input is valuable. And if you see us going right when we should go left, let us know. We need your input. This project is to empower all of us. The auction is more like a vehicle for you to sell your cultivars, your genetics, than a vehicle for us to make all this money. So please join us. We would love to have your mindset at the table and your opinions at the table, so we only make this better, because that's what's making it so great in the first place.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today. It's always a pleasure to speak to you.
Thank you, Kevin. Have fun with the fam today.
Thank you.